While you guys did a pretty good job of doing CECA in general, analysis broke down and got weak for most people where you had to connect back to happiness. And that is where the argument gets complicated, is that you have to explain the control tactic and then link it to human rights and then connect it back to happiness. So here's a couple examples of how people did this pretty successfully. So this one, the first part that's not in bold is the writer's evidence and interpretation. It says, in one of the first grade textbooks was an illustration of kids playing with a toy tank with a caption underneath. The translation in English was, the tiny tank is going, our tank is going, crushing Americans, the tiny tank is going, and then there's the source. Even preschool-age kids are being informed about North Korea's hatred toward the Americans. They are being taught these biases at a young age in order for the government to shape their minds early in life. When the students become adults, these will become their beliefs, and no one can prove them to be otherwise unless told directly by the regime. And now this part in bold is where the writer connects back to how this impacts human happiness. Because these kids, as well as Winston, are not capable of sharing their true thoughts and feelings due to the environment they were raised in and the ideals they were taught as youth, they will never fully be themselves. If they continue to pretend they are something they are not, they will never be truly happy with what they or their life has become. One more example that shows how a specific piece of evidence would impact people's happiness. Again, the unbolded part is the evidence and the interpretation. The bolded part is the connection back to the claim about human happiness. In North Korea, the regime owns all domestic news outlets, regulating and limiting the flow of information within the country. North Korean journalists all belong to the ruling party, and foreign journalists are typically defamed in official North Korean media as liars attempting to destabilize the government. The government's control over everything in the state allows them to have control over the media like this, and by using their power to censor it, their citizens are not possibly as happy as they could be if they were permitted to access media freely. Citizens do not have the ability to learn much about anything outside of their country, especially anything that degrades North Korea or its ruling class. Okay, and now in bold, the connection back to how does this impact Koreans' happiness. By not having this type of information, North Koreans would be more hesitant to not support their country's leaders because they would be less aware of their faults. This is good for the government, but definitely negative for the people, who should have the right to obtain and share knowledge in a free media. So again, both students have been able to take what had happened with the control tactic and try to hypothesize how this might make people in North Korea feel, or how this might make them less happy than they would be otherwise. And this is the piece of analysis that lots of people need to work on.